Hey, this is Jared and Nate, and we're coming to you about how to become a freight broker. We talk a lot on our show about, processes. We talk a lot about strategy, but today we're going to just break down some basic blocks. How do you become a broker? Nate, I know you've done a lot of work on this. I've had the opportunity to be a part of this process, and so I'm excited to talk about this today.
Yeah, for sure. Especially, it's a hot topic in our industry because so many people are transitioning to work from home. And I think the biggest thing is being a broker, dispatcher. So it's like, how do you get to that point
Yeah.
to achieve that goal? And what do you need to do?
For me, let's break this down. Like, I know there's basic steps. We're going to talk about some of the basic steps.
Yep.
You got to register with the FMCSA, all this stuff. We'll talk through that. You really have to do some proper research and training to kind of get not only your mindset, it's a sales job. It's a tough industry, right? You've got to have some proper research done. Watch our show, watch some other people's shows, but you got to have some proper research done so what are you jumping into, what are some of the basics, and honestly, there's some coaches out there, there's some trainers that we deal with, that can help you with some proper training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there is quite a bit to kind of get through. Signing up with the right training material. How do you even get set up? What do you need to be doing with the FMCSA? So it can be all confusing, and I'm glad we're really talking about this today because I think it's going to help.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So first things first, get your mind right, research the industry, and do some proper training, because sometimes, at least, it's a lower cost option to do training up front and see if you even like this industry.
That's a good idea, actually. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's first and foremost.
Yeah.
Find somebody that you can do a trainer. We work with, several different trainers. Shaggy is exceptional. Charles is exceptional. It's whoever you communicate best with. But those are people that you really need to take the time and get in touch with, pays a little bit of money, and just count it as expenses to getting set up as a broker.
Right. And what's nice too, those both trainers, like, you can give them a call today and they'll talk you through it over the phone if it's something you're interested in.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll give you a free day or two to come join their class and check it out. So you never know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So check those two people out that we recommended. We do have a couple others that we can recommend, but find somebody that will walk you through the process step by step, help you maybe with some documentation stuff.
Yes, that's important.
And we'll talk some about that documentation stuff here in a sec, but walk you through some of the documentation stuff, even maybe some templates, things that actually can make a difference in how you set up your foundation. Okay. So that's your first thing. The second thing is that you've got to get on FMCSA and register to become a freight broker. And we can put those links down in the show notes. That it's really that simple. You can actually get on there. There's actually people that'll do this for you as well. So if you want to find somebody that'll help you set up your authority, cost you a couple $100, and they'll do this for you.
Okay, that's interesting.
Which is kind of a convenient function, but at least that way you get in, you get set up as a freight broker. It'll take a little bit of time to work through that process, but simply enough, that's what you got to do. You got to go on the FMCSA, register to become a freight broker, and then kind of work through that process.
Right. And I know we have a bunch of steps today, and I know we'll probably get to this. How long does it typically take for a broker to get everything done and start ready to move loads? How long does that usually take, that period?
That's a good question. This is a great question. And this all depends on how quickly you learn, how quickly you can adapt and understand the industry. For somebody that's experienced, you can be up and running in less than, say, 60 days.
Okay.
You could probably even be up and running a little bit quicker than that, even if you're on.
Yeah.
Somebody that maybe just getting into the industry probably needs to get some training underneath them or build a better foundation. That could take, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months.
Okay.
That's such a great question. But go into the FMCSA, get registered for your broker authority, get registered for your name. I think this is really important that, you set up your corporation with an accountant, with a lawyer, do things properly.
Yeah.
Right. This way you are making sure that you're setting up, how your business is ran. Are you an S Corp or a C Corp or an LLC or there's a lot of different things that come into that. And for tax, reasons, I always recommend doing, an LLC as an S Corp. This just protects you a little bit.
Yeah.
And so those are things that I think is really important that you do. I also think from an accounting standpoint, does it matter where you register your brokerage? Do it from the state you live in.
Okay.
There's some good accountants. We've had Jay on that.
Yeah.
There's an accountant that we did an interview with, and he can actually do a lot of great information for you, and help you with things such as like, if there's any minority updates that potentially can help with your brokerage or even with your taxes, things like that. So, honestly, getting set up with the right people from the beginning, I think is probably more important than anything.
Yeah, I agree for sure. And that's what's nice about, YouTube channels like ours, and there's others out there for sure. But take a watch, make sure you're taking notes, and if you have questions, call us up. We're here to help.
Right. Yeah. So when you become a freight broker, you register to become a freight broker, there's a couple other things that you have to have. You've got to have a surety bond. There's several different people and levels of bonds that are needed or that you can get. 75,000 is the minimum that they require. And again, you can either go straight to TIA, right? Transportation Intermediate Association.
Yep.
Right. You can go and get your bond through them.
Okay.
There's other ways of getting bonds. There's companies out there. Surety bond is what you're going to Google. But TIA is kind of right where you can start. To be honest with you, I don't know if enough people utilize TIA's association.
Right.
Their goal is to help people become freight brokers. They have great education courses. They've got the bonds. They can help you, walk you through, become a freight broker from start to finish.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
It's a wonderful association. We belong to TIA. We love TIA. I've gone to their conferences. Big fan of this association. They really have, they want to help people give back.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. People need that.
So I think it's important that, and you can start your training. You can kind of do almost everything on the TIA website because it's sort of our association that represents freight brokers, intermediate freight brokers out there to the government, and make sure that we've kind of got the proper pieces in place. Right.
Okay.
So you can get your surety bond there. You can also start, even honestly, they'll literally walk you through how do you become a freight broker right there on their site.
Yeah.
And it's actually it's a good piece. So a lot of good articles. You can subscribe to their newsletter. Those are good things.
Good.
When it comes to your insurance, here's something that, you need to make sure that you protect yourself, right? In trucking, things happen all the time, right? Accidents can happen. Loads can, not be refrigerated long enough. You can get rejected loads if you're doing reefer loads. You can, I've seen kind of it all, to be honest with you. And insurance is meant for just that.
That protection. Yeah.
You need it, right? So not everybody does offer, freight brokerage, insurance, right? But you need to get, essentially general liability, right? You've got to have it. You've got to have freight broker auto liability. You don't own assets, but they have brokerage insurance that essentially covers that. Okay. And then, I've always been a big believer in two other things. You have to have cargo insurance. You don't have a choice. I think the government requires you to have 100,000. Okay. I don't know that number for a fact, but I know the brokerages that I've been in always had 100.
Right.
It's always important. This is something that you guys always need to think through is how much is this load worth? And let's just say you go pick up a load of meat or go pick up a load of raspberries or something like that. If I got a load of Omaha steaks, those loads are worth 300,000.
Right.
You get some fish on your truck, they're worth 300, 400, 500,000. So that cargo insurance, just because you got the first one, you got 100,000, doesn't mean you can't go back to your insurance agent and say, hey, I got on a new client. They require 300,000. Can you do that? You can get separate insurances for different clients.
Oh, that's awesome. I did not know that.
Yeah.
So that's good to know. Yeah.
It is good to know. But to get your brokerage going, get the 100 out there.
Yeah.
And then here's the one that I really think is really important. A lot of people skip this. It's just peace of mind. There's insurance called errors and omissions. And it's truly for just the silliest stuff. You get a load of blueberries rejected at Sam's Club. Well, what are you going to do with that?
Right.
Besides probably take some home to the kids.
Right. Yeah.
You're going to have to find some place to dispose of it.
Yeah.
You're going to have to, you're not just setting up shop. Well, you might set up shop on the side of the interstate, depends on the time of year.
Yeah.
But, you've got to get rid of that whole load. So what do you do with it? You usually are calling cattle people or things like that, that they can eat their stuff. But load's going to cost you, $15,000-$20,000.
Right.
Errors and emission insurance, I honestly have to say, has really helped with those things that you wouldn't expect to happen that aren't necessarily included in cargo insurance.
Right. So it's good to spend the money, or
just get that extra peace of mind. It's an extra layer.
Yeah.
Errors and emission, I think, is really important to get.
Yeah.
Right.
Good advice. Yeah.
I think that's really important. So now, the other thing that obviously you've registered, you got on FMCSA, or you went on TIA, you've got your bond, you've got your insurance. I mentioned it earlier, but make sure that you set up your company with an accountant so that you know what your regulations are for taxes, for, all. Here's what ends up happening is, and this is why a lot of dispatchers kind of start where they start. Some of them don't even register with LLCs, or they don't get companies going because they're like, well, what if it doesn't work?
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is, if you make $200 a week from a carrier, how are you getting taxed?
Right.
How much of that $200 should you set aside in another bank account to make sure that you're paying taxes on what you're going to end up taking, right?
Huge, yeah.
You're self-employed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have multiple people, then there's accountants for this, but this is why accountants exist.
Right.
And there's a lot of great ones that'll help you over the phone, over Zooms, whatever it may be. So, man, I tell you what, I know those insurance, you start making those margin checks, make a couple $100, make $1,500, whatever it is, you've got to set aside time for taxes.
Yeah.
Whew.
Oh, that is huge. And I mean, each state's different too, so it's important to kind of know that what your state's doing. And
yeah.
So definitely link up with an accountant. And
absolutely. Yeah. And then also, all of this aside, right? There's a lot of costs involved in what we just talked about.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? You have to pay money to become a broker. You have to pay money for training. You have to pay money to the lawyer that helped you set up the LLC. You have to pay money to the accountant. All those things, by the time it's all said and done, you probably can get a brokerage going for, $3,000 to $5,000, depending on how much you're spending on training and things like that. Right.
So it'd probably be, for those of you that are trying to or thinking about switching to this industry, make sure everything we're still talking about today is take that into consideration. And, we're not saying quit your job now and start tomorrow kind of thing. I think it's important to prepare to get into this, keep your job, save up, the money and slowly work your way into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something this is kind of a funny question, but you have to have a $75,000 bond.
Okay. Yeah.
And for some odd reason, people think that you actually have to spend $75,000 to get that bond. And that's not the case. It's going to be less than $2,000. It'll be, I've seen them anywhere from $800 to $1,500. Kind of depends on who you go through.
Yeah.
But I think something that you really have to take into consideration, and this is really important, is you have to build a business plan that represents all these costs to get into it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you don't physically own anything. I think that's probably what the most interesting thing is. Yes, you have a license to become a freight broker. Yes, you've done some training. But it's not like my brother who owns a carpet cleaning business. Yeah. This guy went out, he spent, $10,000 on getting a van, and he can see it. He walks out into his into his garage and he sees his truck that he bought.
Yep.
With a brokerage, you don't, right? You've got a phone.
Yeah, that's true. Very true.
Right?
Yeah.
And you've got an authority to do that, right? Yeah. So something that I can't stress with people enough is get a good business plan, get a pro forma, okay? Yeah. Pro forma is a wonderful word, but it gives you a way of looking at, okay, here's all my expenses, right? And here's how much I need to live, right? We got to pay ourselves. We got to live. We got to feed our kids. We got to pay our mortgage, whatever it may be, right? You've got to get into it. But that business plan, that performa will give you a better understanding of, okay, you know what? If I work really hard for the next 6 months, I will not only pay off everything that I just had to get, but I'll make, say, $20,000. Right. So I think what is also important at the beginning here is, you start the proper training, write a business plan. Because you can call all these people, you can get all these, you can get a surety bond quote, you can get an insurance quote, you can figure out on the FMCSA how much does it cost to actually register to become a freight broker, right? You can get all these things, start to get estimates, and really get an understanding of, okay, this is going to cost me five grand, and then I need to be able to live, right? So I think developing that business plan is so key. A couple things that you'll deal with right away after you've got everything registered, you've got your business plan. How do you build credit? You know what I mean? Nobody wants to work with you if you don't have credit.
Right.
In this industry, my brother who bought a truck, the guy next door that needs his carpet cleaned, or the guy next door that needs his vents, sucked out. They're not sitting around going, man, I better run that guy's credit before he comes and does this, right? But in our world, in trucking and logistics, there is millions of dollars at stake. There's no other way of putting it. You can become $1 million revenue generating company by moving. I mean, let's just do this real quick. It doesn't take much. Let's just say the average load in our industry is $1,700. If you move 588 loads at $1,700, you're $1 million company. Right?
Yeah.
So people want to know if you're going to pay your bills. Really quickly. So how do you build credit? A few things that you do, little things. Obviously, because you're now self-employed, you can obviously, get a small credit card with your bank and start putting gas on there and paying it off. I know that's silly, but it's a little things like that that'll start to build up credit. The other thing that they've done is there's factoring companies out there. These are companies that pay bills, okay? And what they do is if you're a freight broker, you can go to, Seven Oaks is a good one. They do freight broker factoring. And what that means is they'll help pay your bills for you for a percentage of your freight, right? So for instance, if I finally get, a load, I find a truck, I make a couple $100 rip, they're going to take, 5 to 7% or whatever it is, right? And away you go, right? But to start, those factoring companies are probably worth your time, unless you just have somebody that's backing you up, or unless you're just trying to bootstrap. A lot of people that I know are trying to bootstrap. Not everyone has, the uncle that says, hey, I'll give you a couple 100,000, see what you can do with it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, set up your financing, keep working on credit. That first year is going to suck. There's no other way of putting it. You've got to work on getting better credit. You've got to work on just those little things so that you can start going, all right, I'm going to show up. Because what happens is if you get on load boards, people are going to look, well, does this guy have credit? How old is this broker? No, I'm not even going to touch him, right? So you got to focus on building relationships right away with carriers. And that's something, obviously we're just talking business here today, but you've got to set up time to build relationships with carriers, because those are the people that are going to move the freight for you once you get a customer. Okay. So I know a lot to take in, a lot going on there, but make sure you get a way to pay your bills or a way to factor your bills. And Seven Oaks, we work with Monica over there. She's a wonderful lady. Give her a call and she'll take care of you. Right? Are we on still?
Yeah, we're sure.
We're on. So okay. Sorry, I didn't realize what was going on.
Yeah,
My bad. But as a freight broker, you have to have good templates. You need a carrier packet, is what you would call it, and that's going to essentially have your W-9, which you would have gotten when you set up your company, right? It would have probably information about your bank, probably information about your insurance, and just information about your company, right? But you got to have good templates just so that it looks professional, looks nice. It also protects you. That freight carrier broker agreement will protect you when you're in the court of law. Hey, did you set up with this carrier properly? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, taking the time to get all your contracts in place, which is going to be that carrier broker agreement. You probably need a shipper agreement. Those aren't always used. It always just depends on the size of the shipper.
Okay.
But having somebody that you can legally have, hey, I just got this carrier or this shipper packet from a shipper. Can you read this and let me know what you think? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
First and foremost, I know there's a lot of crazy, you got to have this insurance and this indemnity, clause and all this stuff. Find out how quick they pay their bills, right? That's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
But, get those essentially, get those documents made. You can see them out there. Some trainers have them.
Yeah.
We have them. We can send you some templates. Hit us up at support@eCarrierCheck.com. We can probably help you with that.
Yep.
And then lastly, but not least, there was a lot of work that went into this.
Yeah.
But last but certainly not least, you need to start building a pipeline. And that pipeline needs to be twofold, right? The first fold is you need to start calling shippers and you need to start calling carriers, okay? And in my personal opinion, don't just go willy-nilly and start calling Amazon and Walmart, and don't call these huge customers. Go out and find, those, what I'm going to call smaller shippers, those people that are doing 100 million a year or 50 million a year, 25 million a year. Find those guys to cut your teeth with and be completely transparent, in my opinion. People just want to know who you are, and they want to know, do you sound like someone that I can trust? Right?
Yeah. I got a question for you.
I love
questions. We speak with a lot of brokers, dispatchers, a lot of good questions I get. Well, where should I start? What type of equipment should I get into? Some of the things that I've learned from Charles Mundy, shout out to him. He likes to teach the top 3 most popular equipment types, dry van, reefer, flats. So would your suggestion be maybe start there and maybe find those shippers that work with those type of carriers, kind of start there? A lot of people are confused where to start. How do they pretty much start putting their, their self out there and making that pipeline?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would definitely, Charles Mundy does hit this on the head, and I love this. He focuses on flatbeds, vans, and reefers. That's kind of where the majority of freight is at, right? And personally, what I would do if I was just starting a freight brokerage, I would call people within a 400 to 600 mile radius.
Local.
Somewhat local, and just hey, this is Jared over in Gearing, Nebraska, right? And I would focus on the basics of freight. It's no different than when you started throwing a ball, right? You didn't just go play baseball. You had to step and throw, right? You had to play catch, and it's that simple, right? Yeah. And it's the same in freight. In my mind, you're not going to jump into stretch RGNs and all this crazy stuff, a heavy haul. Let's just focus on some basic blocking and tackling, some basic throwing, and you're jumping into vans or you're jumping into reefers, you're jumping into flatbeds, and just start to kind of get to know things. I think this is something that's really interesting, and we're not really even talking about this today, but you need to have some technology behind you in order for you to be successful, in my opinion.
Right.
You can't just do this willy-nilly.
Yeah.
In my mind, you could just start with eCarrierCheck.
Yeah.
And we'll show you shippers. We show you carriers. You're good. Now, you do need a way to dispatch, right? I've seen some guys make some cool Excel sheet rate confirmations. Shout out to John Gay for that. I've seen some crazy ones.
He's awesome.
But, a TMS is kind of a must-have.
Okay.
And then you've got to have a sourcing platform, right? The sourcing platform that we built is a proactive way of running your business.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way of not sitting here overreacting all day on load boards.
Yeah.
We'll talk about load boards more later,
Yeah.
but I definitely think, as far as becoming a freight broker, you got to have some technology around you. How do you build that shipper list? You get on eCarrierCheck, you type in the cities that you want to talk about, or maybe you're down in Georgia or the area, or maybe you want to get into, concrete because you used to work in a concrete plant.
Mm-hmm.
You look at shippers that make sense for you, and you start to call them.
Yeah, it gives you that ability to have more control over your business instead of living off that load board too as well. And then we're just at the point in the world now where technology is getting crazier and crazier.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I know some people, aren't big fans of it, but it truly can really help your job, a little bit, make it a little bit easier, or just grow that company of yours. So definitely look into that technology. I really can't stress that enough either.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day too, we talked about everything you need to do, right? And one of my favorite things that you say is, what's your why? Yeah. Remember, as you go through every step that you need to do this to be that broker, think about your why and why you want to do it. That's one of the things I love about you. You think about your why every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I can give you an example. I talked to this guy yesterday. Really interesting guy. And I asked him, I said, what drives you? You seem very motivated. Yeah. And he said, I just want a different way to support my family.
Oh, love that.
And I did too. I was like, this is what it's all about. Yeah. When you come to work, when you shut that door, those people in those houses are why you're coming to work and why you're working your ass off. Right. So, big fan of that. Obviously there's technology, there's a phone system. There's other things about becoming a freight broker that are really important, making sure that you have, some kind of phone system or something like that. Having some kind of technology is really important. And then just get some kind of mentor. Yeah. You may not be paying some guy for training, but there's a lot of good mentors out there. They post their content on social media. They usually are open to asking questions. If you ask us a question, we'll get back to you. Oh, yeah. And we want to help. We want to see people grow in our industry. We love this industry. So a lot of fun. And, at the end of the day, this is a very rewarding career. It is. But you got to be, mentally tough. Mm-hmm. You got to be ready to take some licks. It's a sales job. Yep. But if you're willing to do those things, you can be successful. I've seen people make an insane amount of money doing this job. Yeah. So
yeah, I agree. But I really enjoyed today's talk, how to get started. And obviously there's more to that, to being a broker, just this, but this is where you need to start. And then obviously next steps to start calling and, things like that, calling shippers. What do you say? What's nice is we have some videos on our channel. So check out our channel, go through our videos, and we talk with some great trainers and just like influencers. So you'll learn a lot by watching some of the videos on our channel. So definitely will give you some more knowledge.
Love it. Thanks for today, man.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Take care.
Have a good Christmas.